He walked in the studio. He said it before, but I'm telling you how impactful it was. He walked in the studio and he was like, yo, this dude 50, y'all gonna have to deal with him in the next couple months. He said it to the whole crew. You got to deal with him. Yeah. It was one time me and Bleak was in the studio and I heard a 50 record and I looked at Bleak. This dude said, I know you don't love me because you ain't the same when Jay-Z's around. Well, I said, Bleak, that's all. How do we not say that? Jay acknowledged it early. He was like, y'all gonna have to deal with this dude. He's coming.
Welcome to the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. Now, here's your hosts, B. Cox and the crew.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Vault Podcast, Classic Music Reviews. Presented by IV Creative, it's a perspective of the classics from a fresh point of view. We appreciate you for taking your time and lending your ears to our perspective. You could be anywhere listening to anything, but you're right here with us, so we thank you. With you today is yours truly, B. Cox, and with me, I have none other than my boy in the place to be, J.O., here to break it down with me once again. Jay, thanks for joining me here on the Vault. We got a great one to break down, but before we get into that, I want to give our thanks to all the listeners out there, stateside and worldwide, for continuing to support the show. Guys, we can't thank you enough for continuing to get the word out there. We got a lot of great things coming up, and this is the first album review for this year. So we want to make sure that we got a lot of things lined up here for y'all for 2003, 1998, and 93. It's going to be a lot of historic albums we're going to be breaking down. So make sure you continue to spread the word. And of course, a reminder, go to our website, vaultclassicpod.com. Once again, that's vaultclassicpod.com. You can go there, check out all the episodes, also leave a review, leave a voice note. You can get to our Buy Me a Coffee page right there. Click on the coffee cup shaded in yellow on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And there, you can click on that, get to there to send us a monetary donation to make sure that we can continue to keep the vault open for many years to come. And of course, to show your appreciation as well, as we appreciate all of you. Again, that's vaultclassicpod.com. You get there as well. You can get to all of our social media sites. Make sure you're clicking on the Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter buttons to make sure that you're following us. And we'll definitely make sure to give you guys a follow back and make sure to drop a line once you're there just to say hi and let us know what you think about the show. Once again, vaultclassicpod.com. As we always say here on the Vault, our motto is hashtag open the vault, hashtag nothing but the classics, or NBTC. And today, Jay, our first review for 2023, and we're starting off from an album from 2003. So we're going to go back 20 years ago today. And it's exactly today when we're looking at it. You're looking at the time that this is being released, 20 years ago today. And I'm glad that I have you on here for this album, sort of like the same way that I've had you on for so many of our reviews. But the perspective, I think, that we provide on this being unique at the time of life that we were having, just like when we talked about the Sean Paul Dutty Rock album, I feel like this is another album that defined our times and where we were when we were in college. So we're going back 20 years ago, exactly today, February 6, 2003, to the debut studio album of none other than 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Tryin', released on Interscope Records, Shady, Aftermath Entertainment, and also 50 Cent's G-Unit Records. The runtime on this, 53 minutes, 44 seconds. The producers on this, executive produced by none other than Dr. Dre, and also executive produced by his mentor, Eminem. The associate producers on this who provided some of the best production on an album that we had heard in some time, Sha Money XL, Sean Blaze, Darrell Branch, Dirty Swift, DJ Rad, Terrence Dudley, Mike Elizondo, Megahertz, Mr. Porter, Red Spider, Rockwilder, Reef, J-Praize, so many different other producers on this that provided beats on this album. And the singles from Get Rich or Die Tryin', Jay, the first one was kind of a pre-single, was Wankster, which showed up on the 8 Mile soundtrack to kind of let us know that 50 was coming, and was the first thing that we had heard from him in quite some time. But the first single, the biggest single, one of the biggest singles you talk about, not just of that year, but probably of that decade, probably of this century, of In the Club, released in January of 2003. The second one, 21 Questions, released in March of 2003. Many Men, released in May 2003. PIMP, released in August 2003. And If I Can't, released in September of 2003. You were going to say something, Jay, when I was mentioning In the Club.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm thinking that's probably one of the biggest joints ever.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I'll get to that particular song, and when I first heard it, you are right. It definitely is one of the biggest singles released. It was a smash hit. And like we like to say, Jay, on the internet, like y'all wasn't outside. Like truly, a lot of y'all was not outside when this joint dropped. You had to really be outside to understand how big that song in particular it was. But this album altogether was just something that was absolutely huge. And we'll get to that in just a second. But to go further into the background, Jay, of 50 Cent. Now, 50 was a rapper, came up in Queens, had been discovered and sort of co-signed by Jam Master Jay. He was signed to Jam Master Jay at first. Also secured a label deal with Columbia Records and was scheduled to come out with his debut album, The Power of the Dollar, in 2000. We all know what happened then. 50 was shot 9 times in front of his grandmother's house in Queens. And he survived the shooting, but afterwards was dropped from his label, and they canceled the release of Power of the Dollar. Well, for a period of about 2 years, he was ostracized from the hip-hop industry. People didn't want to touch him. He sort of was like, I want to say, as a leper. And then finally, he started releasing mixtapes when he got back on his feet, and he started to generate a buzz. And then it was a bidding war to be able to sign 50 because everybody knew the potential he had beforehand. And in 2002, Eminem listened to Guess Who's Back, his mixtape. And then what happened is that they signed him. They signed him through Shady Aftermath, and it allowed him, of course, the ability to start his own record label, G-Unit Records. And he signed that $1 million deal and then got the next mixtape out, No Mercy, No Fear. They put out Wanksta, and then Get Rich or Die Tryin was scheduled to come out. And then after that, as they say, the rest is nothing but history. So it's crazy, man, that this is the way that it transpired, that those sequence of events that led from him getting shot to being dropped to being where he is now is ridiculously crazy to me, man. You know, as we always like to say, we want to review things how they are. And so now we're going to go ahead and get into it.
First thoughts and reflections.
So I'm going to go to you, Jay. 50's Get Rich or Die Tryin. As we mentioned, you know, we were at Morgan during that time. This spring 2003 semester started with this right there at the top of everything that was happening. And I want to get your perspective on what you thought about the album when you first heard it in full. And then just give us a little bit of perspective of how you think that sort of transpired throughout the rest of that year and how that led to 50 and his success that he saw throughout the rest of the decade.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, of course, going back to that time, you know, February 2003, like, you know what I'm saying, it's in the Morgan State. But even then, like, going back to what you were saying as far as, like, that bubble up to Get Rich or Die Tryin', like, I remember, like, the impact of that comeback 50 Cent made, like, as far as, like, you know, Wanksta coming out and him hitting all the spots. Matter of fact, he did come to Morgan in 02. I don't know if he was a homecoming performer or it was just, like, a performance in Baltimore where, like, you know, Morgan was deep out that joint.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, because I remember it was, like, where the old Burlington Coat Factory was, like, posts up there, like, 50 Cent coming and all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, 50 ain't playing, like.
Yeah.
And then I thought about, like, you know what I'm saying, even on the 2002 rap about skills, he was like, 50 came back like a motherfucker. I'm like,
yeah,
he did. Like, there's no denying that.
Absolutely.
But then Get Rich or Die Tryin' drops, and then just out the gate, it just hit. It's not like it took time for it to hit. It just, like, from the time the joint starts to the first song comes on, like, you know what I'm saying, it just hit. And then it just was able to keep up that momentum, which I think is something that's kind of missing from some albums these days. Like, it's like they understood the hype back then to make sure, like, they hit that consumer, like, just repeatedly with those slaps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate to say it like this because, I mean, it is incorporated to it from then up until then, you know, as what as I do. It was like Ja Rule, and then it was like Ja Who, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It was like no more talk about him except, you know what I'm saying, when 50 was dissing him. But then, like, aside from that, like, it was still diverse in this way. It was like joints for everybody. It was like street joints, club joints for the ladies, you know what I'm saying, like 21 Questions.
Yeah.
So he still was able to keep it versatile, even though, you know what I'm saying, it was like with all that hype, kind of that pressure on him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he lived up to it. Of course, like, going into 03 and then 04, like, you know, like, the ground was kind of laid for, like, G-Unit to come out with their stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, like, the G-Unit album and everything they produced with them, and then, you know what I'm saying, for better, for worse, like, you know, Game, like, not saying Game didn't smash, but of course, like, it was beefs with him and 50 later on.
Yeah.
It really, like, laid the groundwork for G-Unit Records and all like that.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, like, still holds up. It's just that it took me back to that time. I just can't help but think about that time period.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like,
yes, sir.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we weren't kids anymore, of course, but at the same time, we weren't whole grown adults either. So we really got to, like, enjoy it in that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Young, wild, and free. That really was
No
the
bills.
way. No bills. That's the way that I really could explain that time. So it's interesting, man, that you mentioned that. And I'll touch on a couple of those points that you mentioned because it just reinforces to me that we're thinking the right thing as far as when it comes to our perspective on this album. This album comes out right when the spring 2003 semester is getting ready to start. And you're starting to get the buzz from it. And it's getting the buzz that is rarely felt when you talk about a debut album from somebody. Like, I can only probably say the debut from this was probably as widely anticipated than maybe only a handful of people all time, right? So I'm thinking Snoop. I'm thinking Nas. I'm thinking Biggie. You can search for a few other like hype debuts during that time, NWA, a few other acts that you could think throughout time that the debut album was definitely hyped and it lived up and surpassed the hype. This was definitely it. Now, just a little bit of perspective as we talked about, me and Jay were at Morgan. So this album drops right before, for those of y'all who remember, that blizzard of 2003 that was absolutely catastrophic where it felt like there was snow on the ground and things were shut down for, I want to say at least, it felt like a couple of weeks, you know? It felt like a couple of weeks. But I always associate this album with a few things, and I'll put it in these orders. One, it's that blizzard of 03. Like, a few days after this, my cousin passed away, and this was right before my pledge process start, when I pledged National Society Persian Rifles. And I associate this album in particular with those things, because that's what dominated that semester to me. But before I got to even all that, I turned 21 in January of that year. So I was able to actually not just go to the club, but I was able to go to the club and actually consume alcohol while I was in the club. Like, well, I would consume alcohol, but it would either be through getting a drink pass, but I was able to legally do it and I have to hide it because I was actually 21 years old. I was in the club when I first heard In the Club. And it was such a big hit when we heard it that night. The DJ ran it back like 3 or 4 times off the break. Like, let that first verse run. Then he was like, hold up, pull up, spin the records real quick. We need to run that back. And he ran it back. And each time he played it, it was like the hype grew even more. It was an incredible experience. That song became, like you said, one of the biggest joints, not just of that year, but then also that decade. And really historically, it really is an historically big single. I mean, a single that now, 20 years later, is still a single that gets a reaction out of people. You know, some people are sort of sick of listening to it, but without a doubt, this joint really kind of made the album because it kind of grabbed everybody's attention and you got everything else that came with the album as a result of that. That's what was big. The album singles were big, right? We talk about the In the Clubs and the Wanksters and the Many Men, but the album tracks became iconic as well. I mean, when you get into an album so deep and then people are able to dig into it, right? It's just beyond the 21 questions and the joints that are big and have the commercial appeal. When you dig into an album and the album tracks become iconic, you got a winner on your hand. That really was what started the journey to make 50 a huge stars in the 2000s. This album. And this album, at the time that it came out, sold the most units in its debut week more than any other hip-hop album in history. Yes, even bigger than Doggy Style, which is saying something of how big that album was. That's another album we'll cover later on this year. So it successfully, as you mentioned, it stopped the freight train of commercial success that had become Ja Rule, Irv Gotti, and Murder Inc., who, starting, I want to say, from the time when I first got into Morgan in 2000, up until that summer and fall of 02, had consistent string of hits, who was either Ja Rule or affiliated with Murder Inc. It was like they had commercial hit after commercial hit after commercial hit. That success was almost seeming like it was nonstop. No one else in the industry seemed to be able to break through that to say, like, you know what, we're going to put a stop to all this. Not even Jay. Not even Jay, because Ja Rule still ate while Jay was still out doing his thing, no, without a doubt. But it stopped. It was a blow that they never truly recovered from afterwards. Now, we see now Ja Rule's still performing now. He actually has the tour he's getting ready to go on with Rick Ross and a few other people. It's called the 2000s Tour. And they still have joints that hit and are still popular with people. But when 50 came through the door and basically, I want to say, for lack of a better word, ethered Murder Inc., it was, you know, it was over because at that point in time, it was a blow that brought them down a couple of pegs because it was like, dude, nah, bruh, like we not looking at you the same no more. So that also began the soundtrack to what would be the rest of the spring of 2003 into the summer of 2003 into that fall. And that began a period where from that fall of 03 all the way into, I want to say, the middle part of 05, where it began almost a 3-year period of G Unit's dominance. We talk about afterwards what came after Get Rich or Die Tryin', Beg for Mercy, Hunger for More with Lloyd Banks, Straight Outta Cashville with Young Buck, and then the documentary by The Game, and then the Massacre 52nd album. So things were just lining up. They were in a period where they could not miss. And 50 was absolutely huge. This album laid the groundwork for that. And it's something that when we go back to look and see how Dre and Eminem played this, right? They picked up a dude. They knew he was hot, right? They kept their eye on them throughout the time when people kind of ostracized them. And they jumped on it and they realized, yo, let's spend the $1 million to go ahead and sign this dude. What he's going to make back for us if we play this right is going to pay off in spades. And that's exactly what it did. This was a deal. It was an investment. That was a return on an investment. That was something that Dre ended up getting paid off handsomely for. M ended up getting paid off for. And then 50, look at the empire he built off of that, man. I mean, off of this album, everything. You're not talking about him owning a piece of vitamin water. You don't see of him all the movies, the powers, all the power universe, all the other things he's involved with business-wise, and the cognacs that he has, Branson. You don't get any of that. Effing. You don't get any of that without this album blowing up and being as big as it is. An album that almost went diamond. Certified diamond, which is ridiculously crazy when you think about the hip hop albums that have been certified that since the beginnings of the 2000s. So just massively, massively big for everybody who got involved. And Eminem and 50 and Dre, they all got in this together, and man, did it pay off for every single one of them. All of them came out of this after this much, much more rosy.
Highlights and lowlights.
So Jay, we'll get into your highlights and lowlights to Get Rich or Die Tryin'. What do you have for us?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'll even say the intro was a highlight, you know what I'm saying, with him like kirking off and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it just goes right into What Up Gangsta.
Yeah.
I really can go down a list, but honestly,
yeah.
Of course, Menu Men, 21 Questions, Back Down, PIMP. I don't know if I say In the Club already. And people got to realize In the Club, I don't want to say it was almost a miss. I don't think we covered this, but like, you know what I'm saying, that joint was originally meant for D12.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That joint, I mean, if that joint would have went to D12, I don't think it would have charted as high as like, you know, In the Club with 50. So luckily, you know what I'm saying, it landed in the right hands.
Yeah.
This is a great time to become a nurse, and the Accelerated Bachelor of Science in Nursing program from Averett University can prepare you in as few as 16 months. You're invited to visit our ABSN Learning Center and tour our immersive simulation lab. Learn about our online coursework and how you'll get exceptional real-world experience through clinical rotations. Don't wait. Our next information session is coming up soon. Text INFO-AVE to 31838. That's INFO-AVE to 31838.
Oh, yeah, Poor Little Rich. Yeah, I'm going to add it to my highlights.
Okay, yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, so I'll just stop right there. So,
yeah.
Take up everything.
No, I understand that. You got any lowlights in particular?
Not so much lowlights as far as music, but I wish Magic Stick would have been on here. But I know it was drama behind the scenes with that.
Oh, okay, with the whole thing with
Lil'
Kim.
Kim. Yeah,
that ended up on La Bella Mafia instead.
Right.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
Because I remember the interview he was talking about how it was supposed to be on there, but they wasn't really offering no money for it. So that's how it played out.
Yeah, and that joint became a hit more partially because of him, man. You know, right. I mean, it was big because of Kim, but it became big because of 50 though. So
yeah, and that's another thing as far as like a song I wish would have been on the album, which kind of would add to the 50 Cent's Petty. Mm-hmm. Like If I Smell Pussy was on here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know buddy. Back Down was already on there, dissing Ja Rule, Murder Inc. and all that, but like again, just to add, like, because we know how petty 50 can be as far as like in the beefs and stuff like that. So
he's a king of petty when it comes to it. I feel like he is the clown prince of petty when it comes to hip hop shit. Like he definitely is. His petty knows no bounds. He'll be petty about anything. Like he gives no fucks about that.
Zero.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have anything I really consider a low light. I mean, some joints I might listen to more than others, but I wouldn't consider them low lights as far as the actual songs that made the album.
Yeah, true. Okay. Well, so my highlights. I mean, obviously, all the singles have, you know, definitely value proposition to them. In the Club, where we talked about how big that was. And like you said, if D12 comes out within the Club, that does not hit at all because, you know, it's D12, man. I mean, no disrespect or anything, but that's not going to hit like the way it did with 50. In the Club was all the elements coming together. It wasn't just the song, the hook, the bars, the beat, and then the video that helped to add to the popularization of the song itself, man. 21 Questions was big. And again, these videos played a big part in this too. Because everybody remembers the 21 Questions video because that was the joint when I want to say, we really got a chance to see adult Megan Good. You know what I'm saying? It was like, word. You know what I'm saying? Then she came out with Biker Boys and a few other things, and it was like, all right, cool. Many Men was actually my pledge song, spring of 2003. This is what helped me get hyped up for set. You know what I'm saying? To help me get me motivated to be able to think about stuff. And Many Men became a song that is like, you talk about a song that has grown in mythology beyond the album. Many Men has become an anthem for a lot of people, you know? I'll remember the Commanders, Washington Commanders, former Redskins, when Brian Robinson, the running back who got shot while he was in Northeast D.C., by those two kids trying to take his car, when he came out and was announced in the starting lineup, when he came back finally from his rehab, the song they played when he came out of the tunnel, there was the instrumental of Many Men. And it was iconic. It was like, this is perfect, right? 20-something years afterwards, this is perfect. But Many Men is something that, man, yeah, like I said, has grown into a huge, like almost as big as I want to say is those two singles right there. P.I.M.P., I mean, that was a huge song, man. It was a crossover, like appeal. All these singles had crossover appeal. But P.I.M.P., then you had the remix with Snoop Dogg and then Lloyd and it just worked. You know, If I Can't, I mean, I don't really remember that actually being a single, but I mean, if it was a single, but I mean, it still was a dope, a dope track. But getting to the album tracks, I mean, to start the album with What Up Gangsta, probably one of the best songs to open up an album like that I'd heard in some time. And even now to this day, to figure out to drop a song like that to open up the album, my gosh, like talk about hitting hard and swinging out of the gate. But like, even you want to talk about, I would say, the track listing, right? You start for What Up Gangster, then going to Patiently Waiting. Then from Patiently Waiting, you get into Many Men. Then from Many Men, you go to In the Club. Like, it just continued to hit and hit and hit and hit. Mm-hmm. Whoever did the sequencing on this album, bravo to you. Well sequenced, like way to stack those tracks back to back. Probably one of my favorite, or second favorite tracks on here is probably Heat. Because that Dre production, bruh, using that cocking back of the gun and the shot for the kick and the snare, brilliant. Right. I mean, that's Dre right there, man. That's like, who would think about doing something like that? Like, using that cocking back of the gun and the shot of the kick and the snare, like, bruh, it's a... And 50, I thought, spit some of his hardest bars on that as well.
Facts.
Back Down. You want to talk about going after somebody's neck? Yeah, that's 50 coming after Ja's neck directly, not even trying to hide it. Even saying in the second verse, like, you know what I'm saying, that's Ja, old pussy ass. Like, wow, dog. I mean, the whole album really, I felt like, was a lot of subtle digs at Ja, but then he also came out off the break and let you know who the hell he was talking about. Gotta Make It to Heaven, that beat right there just kind of really felt like, to me, was like movie like quality shit, like, you know, action movie sequence scene. When you talk about some of the cinematic themes, like you talk about Many Men was sort of cinematic in nature, Patiently Waiting, cinematic in nature, those same type of themes. Then to close the album out really with that run of track with Like Me and Life Is on the Line, a really hard way to close out the album, really strong way to close out the album. Overall, man, this album was well sequenced. The album tracks on here backed up the singles. It didn't bore you or turn you away. Other tracks that I really didn't necessarily mention, I mean, even the High All the Time, which to me I think is funny because 50 made that song and he doesn't drink or smoke. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what the hell was he talking about? He's high all the time. Like, he was talking about smoking good shit. And it was just like, hold on. Years later, you figure out, man, 50 don't drink and he don't smoke. And so when in the interview later on, he said it was mostly because of secondhand smoke, because being around his homies. I was just like, 50, you got us, dog. You really convinced us. You really did convince us, for real. I mean, If I Can't, I thought was a good song. If I did have any lowlights, and it's not necessarily a lowlight, but I think it's something that I thought I could have done without. The Like My Style with Tony Yayo. Like, first of all, I've never really been a big fan of Tony Yayo. I think. Okay,
so I ain't got to say it bad.
Yeah, nah. I've never been a big fan. Like, when he got out and he released his album like in 2005 and he came out with the, you know, the single So Seductive or whatever the hell they called it. I don't know what they called it, but it was like, it was like, yo, y'all hyping this dude. Like, I'm not, he like the weakest dude in the G Unit. Like, out of everybody.
I'm
you
sitting
know,
there like a straight face, looking like, okay.
Yo, yeah, exactly. I was never really a big fan of Tony Yayo, and that song I could do without it. Shout out to Rockwilder, but yeah, man, production on this joint though, between Dre, between Eminem, Elizondo, Digga Branch, Sha Money XL, Mr. Porter. I mean, they did their thing on this, man. This Megahertz, they laced this album with tracks that, whether it kept you dancing, made you nod your head, made you want to, go hard or go stick something up or something, it fit the motif of every single track that was on there. And I got to give the credit, not just to 50, but then also to M and Dre being executive producers. You talk about the direction the album needs to go. That's what executive producers do. They craft the album in the direction to make it go into the best direction possible.
Notable quotables.
So we get into notable quotables, Jay. What do you have for your notable quotable for this album?
I was gonna say like probably that whole second verse of Back Down.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll try to keep it as short as I can, right?
Okay.
But, the rap game's all fucked up now. What we gonna do now? How we gonna eat, man? 50 back around. This jolly little punk ass thinking out loud. South side till I die. Just how I get down. I back in the game, shorty, to rule and conquer. You sing for hoes and sound like the Cookie Monster. Dude, I was rolling when I first heard that shit.
Yeah.
And of course, he's like, I'm the hardest from New York. My flow is bonkers. All the other hard niggas, they come from Yonkers.
Yeah.
Some years and you had the same niggas in the background. You never gonna sell Mitsubishi to a crack child.
Yeah.
The niggas dead. They sucked it to no good. I ain't never heard a nigga say it like them in the hood. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
You could just like, you know what I'm saying, like a snippet or something. It would have still been as impactful.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then this one kind of made me like a spit take when I first heard it on Poor Little Rich.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not even like a dissonant like that. But he was New York niggas copy niggas like it's all good. Fuck around, crip walk in the wrong hood. I'm fresh up out the slammer. I ain't no fucking Bama. I'm from the NY world, but we no country rap. I heard he say I ain't no fucking Bama. Like,
yeah.
It's like the record skip. Like what?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That caught my ear when I first heard it too back then. I was like, he just used the word Bama, but then there's like, I always got to remember that Bama was used just outside of DC. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody used to use the word Bama to talk about somebody who was a country bumpkin. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, true.
It was up. My vagina, I just got a point I was on heat.
Mm-hmm.
Look, nigga, don't think you safe just because you moved out the hood because your mama's still around, dog. That ain't good. If you was smart, you'd be shook at me because I get tired of looking for you. Spray your mama crib and let your ass look for me.
Look for me, yeah, exactly. That shit. It's like, damn, shit like that for real?
I would never thought to say something like that.
Hey, but look, man, but it be like that. Dudes will fuck around and move out the hood. They mamas and grandmamas still there, and then all of a sudden the dudes want to get them. It's like spray your mama crib up and make you have to come look for me.
Yeah, niggas don't think about stuff like that.
They don't, man. Yeah,
you move your whole family out of there.
Yeah, I fucking love Heat, dog. I think Heat might actually be my favorite joint on this album, bro. Yeah, you got any other ones, or that's it?
Nah, I'm good there. I'll stop right there.
So I got a couple of ones from Patiently Waiting, right? And it's both 50's verse and Eminem's verse. So 50's verse, of course, I'm innocent in my head like a baby born dead, destination heaven, sitting politic with passages from 9/11. The Lord's blessings leave me lyrically inclined. Shit, I ain't even gotta try to shine. God's the seamstress, this healer fitted my pain. I got scriptures in my brain, I can spit at your dame, straight out the good book. Look, niggas is shook. 50 fear no man, warrior, swinging swords like Conan. Picture me, pen in hand, writing lines, knowing the source are quoted. When I die, they'll read this and say a genius wrote it. I grew up without my pop, should that make me bitter? I caught cases I copped out, does that make me a quitter? In this white man's world, I'm similar to a squirrel, looking for a slut with a nice butt to get a nut. If I got shot today, my phone would stop ringing again. These industry niggas ain't friends, they know how to pretend. Wow, I mean, that and then goes from there, and then it only gets better just by the fact that M gets on there. The fact that he starts it off, because if you're patiently waiting to make it through all the hate and debating whether or not that you could weather the storm, unless you lay on the table to operate and to save you, it's like an angel came from descent from the heavens above. They think they crazy, but they ain't crazy. Let's face it, shit. Basically, they're just playing sick. They ain't shit. They ain't saying shit. Spraying 50. A to the K, and in the way I bring Dre and them with me and turn this day into fucking mayhem. You staying with me? Don't let me lose you. I'm not trying to confuse you when I get loose with this Uzi and just shoot through you or Zuzu. You get the message that I'm getting through to. You know what's coming. Just motherfuckers don't even know, do you? Take some big and some pop. You mix them up in a pot. Sprinkle a little big L on top. What the fuck do you got? You got the realest and illest killers tied up in a knot. The juggernauts of this rap shit. Like it or not, it's like a fight to the top to see who died for the spot. You put your life in this. Nothing like surviving a shot. Y'all know what time it is. Soon as 50 signs on his dot. Shit, what you know about death threats? Cause I get a lot. Shady Records was 80 seconds away from the towers. Them cowards fuck with the wrong building. They meant to hit ours. Better to evacuate all children. It's nuclear showers. It's nothing spookier. You now about to witness the power of fucking 50. Fucking flames, dog. Fucking flames. And it was like they complimented each other perfectly on this, right? 50 rapped in his style, M rapped in his style, and it fucking worked. I mean, so when I talked about my favorite, actually I think this might be my favorite song on the album. It's Patiently Waiting and Then Heat. Like, okay. Goodness gracious, man. And then there's tons of other quotables on here. You mentioned about Back Down. You mentioned that one from Heat. I actually had that one Heat listed as a possible quotable for me as well. But another one that I'll actually fit, this will be my last one, will actually be on The Gotta Make It to Heaven. When he talks about when I come through the hood, I don't stop to rap to niggas, get close enough to smack you, then clap you, nigga. Pac tried the front, so I waved the chrome at his ass. Point blank range, I spat and threw a bone at his ass. 2 weeks later, the niggas came through with Max to lay me down. They sprayed, I played dead and got the fuck off the ground. Out the blue, I got a phone call. 50, what up? They sent a bitch of me. I sent the bitch back, cut up. Damn, my goodness, man. Yo, the bars on here, some of the bars on here aren't necessarily like, you know, lyrically intricate and everything with similes and metaphors, but some of the shit he spit on here, it hits. It hits, dog. And that's all you really need. You don't need a nigga with fucking multi-syllabic rhymes and shit, rhyming like Rakim or Nas or something. Sometimes your words just need to have impact. And I think that's really where 50J, that's where he excelled. His words have an impact. Those bars hitting hard, like hitting you in your fucking chest. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, my goodness. I mean, that's, what else can you say, man? Tons of quotables on this joint, man. I think the beats just set all them quotables up really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, I know neither one was mentioned, but on 21 Questions, like,
oh yeah,
the whole thing, I love you like a fat kid love cake. That's just basically was funny.
Yes, and that became a joint that niggas used afterwards over and over again. I love you like a fat kid loves cake. Like, yo, that became a saying. Like, seriously. Yeah, man, definitely.
Final verdict.
So we get into it, Jay. Final verdicts. You know, I mean, what do you say about 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Tryin' 20 years later? Is it a classic album? Is it an essential album? Is it a dope album? Just good or not that great?
I'm going classic, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Classic for me as well, 10 out of 10. You talk about a foundational album in the 2000s, this is one of the ones you go to. This album became the biggest album of that year. And I have no problem saying that, right? This is in a year that when the Black album came out, this was still the biggest album of that year, right? And that's crazy. Thinking about this is Jay-Z we're talking about, and it was Jay-Z's retirement album. If anybody ever tries to tell you otherwise, who was bigger than 50 in 2003, the answer to that is nobody. Nobody was bigger than this dude in 2003. And if you look at to see what happened after this, this became the catalyst that made 50 a huge star today that has pretty much made him a billionaire and has made it to the point now where 20 years after this, 50's not really even doing music anymore, you know? All he's doing pretty much is doing the TV stuff and entertainment and business, and he's still out there because he needs to get his brand out there. He's still online basically being a troll and being petty, as we know. That's what we know 54 nowadays. He's sort of a caricature of the guy that he wasn't himself, but everybody knows he worked hard, and if nothing else, what he is focused, and he sort of showed everyone. What I think this proved more than anything, Jay, is that he wanted to prove to everybody that everybody who wrote him off and the label who dropped him after he got shot and left him for dead, this was really the comeback to see. Y'all motherfuckers thought I was dead. Like he even said on Many Men, now these pussy niggas putting money on my head, going to get your refund, motherfucker, I ain't dead, you know? And I think that meant not just the niggas who shot him, it also meant for the industry and the rappers and everybody else who deserted him afterwards, man. That's really what I thought it proved, is that he was back and he became a force, and he's still, 20 years later, this album is an album that, when you talk about the impact that it's had ever since then, you can't really, I mean, like I said, if you wasn't outside, you can't really understand. And so, since then, Get Rich or Die Tryin' has been huge, and 50 built an empire strictly off the back of that. But there we have it, boys and girls. 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Tryin', 20 years old exactly today. Make sure you go take a listen to it. Let us know what you think about it. Hit us up on social media, Twitter, IG, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube channel. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. We'd love to continue the conversation. And that is going to wrap up yet another edition of The Vault. Please make sure you are visiting us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. There you can learn more about the show, check out our past episodes, join our mailing list, leave a review, or if so inclined, you can leave us a voice note. Click the blue microphone in the bottom right-hand corner to leave us a voice note to let us know what you think about the show, or to just show us some love. To support the show, click the coffee cup shaded in yellow in the bottom left-hand corner to access our Buy Me a Coffee page. On Buy Me a Coffee, you can give a small monetary donation to support the show to ensure that we can keep the vault open for many years to come. You can also visit us on social media at Vault Classic Pod on IG, Twitter, and on TikTok. Also hit us on YouTube and our Facebook page. Like and follow us on social media, subscribe to the pod and the YouTube channel. We do it here all for you. We appreciate the support, and if you have a friend, tell a friend, and make sure that that friend tells a friend. Always remember to keep your headphones on and your music loud, but not too loud. And as we close, we'd like to remind everyone to dream big, because dreams are the basis for creation. Always create, motivate, and elevate, because you were never destined or created to stay stationary or ordinary in this life. And on that note, we say peace.
Thank you for listening and coming into The Vault. Please subscribe and visit us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com.